Probably the most interesting price movement from this past week appears to be from the Charizards. It kind of looks like a battle of the Charizards. But in reality, that's not actually the case. There definitely has been a lot of attention on Charizard, and my chart seems to show that as well. So it looks like there's been a lot of price movement this past week on Charizards in particular. However, that is really not the case. And I'm only talking about Gen 9, by the way. We're going to keep it simple today. So the top mover is supposedly Mega Charizard X Ex, the SIR from Phantasmal Flames. And the second spot was taken by Charizard from Scarlet 151. And I still call it 151 and not 151. Mega Charizard supposedly moved $84, which is a big jump from $438 to $522. And Charizard from 151 supposedly moved at $13 from about $250 to $263. However, if you look at recent purchases, that's not really the case. Now let's look at Mega Charizard first because this is where shenanigans happen. If you recall from last week's video, I talked about Mega Charizard X Ex and how it looked like it was dropping, but really it wasn't. The reason why it looked low and looked like it was worth only about $438 was because there were purchases on January 6th that seemed to have driven the price down, at least the average down. And when I was checking for those prices today, guess what? They're gone. And I thought I was going crazy. But I looked back at my video from last week, so here it is. I paused the video right at the spot where I highlighted it because I was pretty sure I highlighted it. These purchases, $312, $318, $333. There was a number of these $300 purchases for a near mint hollow Mega Charizard SIR. They were beneath a near mint hollow that was purchased for $519.98. And then right above that one was an LP hollow for $509.82. And fortunately, those transactions are still there. They are right here. Here's the 519, here's the 509, right? Here's the LP, and here's the NM, which means those $300 purchases were supposed to be right here, but they're not. They're gone. So I don't know what happened. Maybe those transactions were flagged. Something went wrong. They were fake. I don't know, but they're gone. So we're just gonna have to treat it like they never happened. But that was the reason why it looked like Mega Charizard was dropping. Now, I called those transactions anomalies, and they are. And that's because a majority of purchases or transactions were $500 to $550. But somebody parting it at $330, yeah, that's a bit insane. So if I were to average out the transactions that I think are real, Mega Charizard really didn't move that much. Even this past week, it really didn't move that much. And there are these $300 purchases again. So I don't know. There's a near mint hollow one here, another near mint hollow one here. Both of them were sold for $331 each. And this one even had a quantity of 2. I don't know if this is going to be flagged again. I don't know. Shenanigans. Anyways, that is my long spiel just to say Mega Charizard didn't really move that much. And if we look at price charting, that is exactly what we see. Nice straight line, which is what I expected. Now going to Charizard from 151. This looks like it's been trending upward, and maybe to a small degree it is, but not by much. If we were to look at recent transactions, it really hasn't moved tremendously from December. There's $250, $240. Somebody purchased for $280 today. But for the most part, prices have been pretty tempered. $250, $240, $250, $240. Sometimes $270, sometimes $260, but rarely. And these are for near mint, by the way. I'm looking only at near mint. Now let's look at December 27th, still $250, even a $290 there. The 28th, there's a $248, then a $253. So yeah, it really hasn't moved that much. And because Charizards, both Charizards, are high valued cards, there's a lot of wiggle room for sellers to sell it at various prices, whatever it is that they like, because they're going to make a good amount of money either way. That's what we're seeing for Charizard. It is pretty stale. But that doesn't mean that there is no top winner, top mover. Because overall, Scarlet Violet 151, the set, has been doing pretty well. Even though the Charizard EX is kind of meh. there are still other really cool cards there, and they are showing upward movement. And it's a steady one. It's not like a big spike, not like a hype. It's more like, oh, people are catching on to how awesome these cards are, and they want it. So let's look at 151. That's really the focus of this video, besides the Charizard battle, or rather the false Charizard battle. So here's Venusaur. Venusaur supposedly moved at about $8.70 from $69 to $78 in a month for Venusaur. If I'm looking at December prices right now, there were a lot of, sales that were generally around $69, like $70. We got 69, we got 60, we got 73, there's another 70, 69, which is pretty much 70 right now, 69.99. There's a 73. There were a lot of prices that were around that range, high 60s, low 70s. Well, now if we scroll it all the way back to more recent purchases, we still see some 68s, high 60s. But now we're starting to see 77, 77. We see an 87. There's another 87. There's a 94. There's a 77 and an 82. So it's really subtle, this increase in price movement. But there is an increase in price movement. It's like people are gradually picking up this card. There's another 82, 82, another 82. People are just slowly accumulating, which I think is much healthier than a hype that spikes the price, if you know what I mean. Everybody's rushing into it, piling on it, and then the hype dies down, and then the price just plummets. Now, another card we're going to look into is actually Blastoise right here. Blastoise has actually seen a pretty healthy growth over the past year. So this 1 year on TCG Player was interesting just because it was like a straight shot up, but liquidity is kind of low, right? 1 item sold, 3 items sold, 1 item versus Charizard, for example, where 5 would sell or 9 would sell or 3 or something like that. Blastoise, yeah, not as much liquidity on TCG Player. So not really going to rely on this, but I'm going to go to price charting. So price charting, we have been seeing a pretty healthy incline. So we have to look all the way over here, right on this right side edge here. There is a tiny bit of an incline like this. This card has been steadily picking up pace. How far will it go? I don't know, but I think in the long term, Blastoise is going to do fine. Same thing with Venusaur and same thing with Charizard, even though it's a little stagnant in the Charizard market. Now after Blastoise, let's go to Wartortle, because if Blastoise is going up, how about Wartortle? Well, Wartortle had gone up a few bucks, just a little bit, from $30 to $33. And if you look at Wartortle here, it looks like it has actually exceeded just a little bit, exceeded the price that it was a year ago. A year ago was at about 31, and now it's at about 34. And in the 1 month, we've been seeing a steady incline like this, which is nice to see. Pretty much matches Blastoise at this point. And if we look at the Wartortle chart for price charting, this is kind of what we see. At least on eBay, it looks like the prices are somewhat stabilizing here, but they were on a general trend up. Very slow. And compared to a year ago, yeah, it is actually at the point where it was a year ago. Kind of like this. Now, what about Squirtle? Because in our chart here, Squirtle had went up at about $5. It was from 45 to 51. And compared to the price that it was at December 30th, it had moved $8 from 42, almost 43 to 51. So if we're at Squirtle, here's Squirtle. Yep, according to the 1 month, it is very similar to Wartortle, where it's moving slowly upward. And according to the 1 year, it has also slightly exceeded that price from a year ago. It was at $48 and now it's at about 51. So Squirtle also has been seeing a steady growth in its price and not a hype growth. It looks like maybe a genuine interest growth, I hope. Basically all the evolutions of Blastoise, Squirtle, Wartortle, Blastoise, has been doing pretty good. It doesn't appear to be a hype or anything, it's just people are slowly gathering them up. Now how about Psyduck? Psyduck had moved about $4 from 29 to 33. So let's look at Psyduck. According to the 1 year chart, Psyduck has actually done pretty well compared to a year ago. It has definitely exceeded its price from a year ago. $21 from before, and now about $32. $32 today. The 1 month has been kind of rocky. It looks like it probably maybe peaked out, so to speak, but its 3 month looks good. Definitely a steady growth in price. So again, it looks like people are slowly, steadily picking up Psyduck, and it was a very liquid card too. 21 items sold, 22, 17, 19, 43 at one point in November. Jeez. And definitely those 43 purchases definitely caused this spike over here, right here, because that is a lot of purchases. And if we look at price charting for Psyduck, yep, steady incline. I personally like to see gradual growth, like a gradually sloped hill, because that means it's not some sort of crazy one-time hype that spikes the price of a card or value of a card, because that would mean a sudden drop, and it kind of sucks for people who are just holding the card. Anyhow, Psyduck is definitely a card to get. No one should be passing up on Psyduck, I think. Page 2 would basically be top 11 to 20. We still have a lot of Scarlet 151 cards that are highlighted. We have Zapdos here, we have Poliwhirl, we have this Mew EX, and then we have this Charizard EX, which I believe is the full art. And then everything else is kind of scattered throughout Gen 9. We have a Shrouded Fable, we have a Destined Rivals, Prismatic, Temporal Forces. But yeah, 151. Definitely a lot of movement there. Now, one card that was not in the top 20 movers is still a pretty good mover, and that is another 151 card, which is Pikachu. Pikachu has exceeded its price from a year ago by a little bit. It was $31 before a year ago, and now it is at about $35. Granted, the near mint is at about 43. And if we look at the 1 month, kind of looks like a Squirtle, so to speak. It has seen a gradual increase in interest, I guess you could say that. The price has been slowly creeping up, and on price charting, it has also been slowly creeping up, kind of like this. It is possible it may reach its highs in September timeframe. Actually, a lot of cards experience a price bump during September 2025, likely because Mega Evolution was releasing, because that lines up with the Mega Evolution release. And I know there was definitely a lot of hype around that. And hype is not really what you want if you want healthy growth in value. You just want natural, good interest. So, of course, after that hype, we saw a price dip right here, which is what we see in a whole lot of other card charts. And then interest starts filling in again. And so we see this increase here. Overall, I think Scarlet Violet 151 is a set that you should always keep an eye out and get some of those cards. In my opinion, they will only go up in value slowly, bit by bit, because if you're looking at this as an investment, you're always going to have to look at it as a long term. That is generally how investments do well. You just hold it and hope that you don't need to sell it immediately or use it as, emergency funds. And real quick, we'll take a peek at some other cards from 151. So here's Poliwhirl. This is beautiful. I love this card. Here's Poliwhirl. In the 1 month, we've also been seeing that slow increase. And in the 1 year, it has almost reached the price that it was about a year ago. Pretty much about the same, $19. And then Nidoking, another one. I think Nidoking had been neglected for a while. And in the 1 month, it's somewhat fluctuating, but it is still seeing a slow trend upward. And a slow trend up is better than a fast trend up, I suppose. Then we have Alakazam, also a great card. Every card here is great. It's just great, especially the IRs and the SIRs. This too has seen a slow increase, and in the 1 year, it has pretty much reached the same price as it was before. And as you can see, there was a massive hype point here, that September timeframe. And of course, since it was a hype, hypes die out, and then there's a drop. Boom, like that. But if we were to eliminate this hype from its bottom from last year, it had gone steadily up like this. I think there was a hype point over here as well. We have seen that in many, many, many other charts if you've been paying attention to the 1 year. There was a lot of these peaks and pretty much about the same time. After that hype, it just bottoms out like this and then interest returns, so it goes up like this. And since TCG Player doesn't have anything beyond a year, let's look at Alakazam on price charting. Yep, it's been a slow increase up from its lows in March 2024 at about $23. It has pretty much doubled. It's at about 45. So again, long-term hold. I think these cards are going to go up slowly, steadily. It is 151. There's hardly a bad card in it, I think. They're really all worth getting. If not for an investment, definitely for a collection. But Mega Charizard and Charizard, it looks like the market has pretty much had its fill of those cards, at least for the time being, and are focusing on other cards instead. And that looks to be 151 cards, at least in the Gen 9 space.